good session out there today. How do you see the boys and how they bounce back from the loss on the weekend?
Yeah, well, we train well. The spirit and the approach to our whole season has been really good, and we had a really good summer. And we're disappointed with 0-5, but to probably the wider footy world, it's no great surprise. We come up against some really good sides. The Cats won a granny 2 years ago or less, 18 months ago, and three of the other four sides we've played all played off in at least a prelim last year. So what we're looking forward to is over the next 5 to 6 weeks, we're playing against some sides that will give us a better indication where we're at. One of those sides is Hawthorn, who are say 0-5. They're in the same sort of phase as us, trying to get a lot of time and exposure into their younger players and giving them opportunity, and different stages of their games too. They've played some really good footy, as we have at different stages, but we just, like all young sides, just haven't been unable to maintain it. So this probably represents our first chance to play against a like-minded side in terms of age profile, experience, and so it'll be a really good challenge. But there's going to be a winner or a loser, and to the wider football world, the loser will be mothballs and disastrous and all that sort of stuff. And the narrative you can read it from 3 or 4 days out. But for both of our clubs, it's all about the exposure to the young guys and about where we're going to be in 2 years' time or 3 years' time, rather than necessarily where we'll be after the result of Sunday's game.
Having said that, how important is the result to sort of validate the work you're doing, and how important is it to the guys' mindset and that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, establishing a winning culture is really important. And so you're trying to do that every game that we play. We go out there with the intention to win. Even with the Cats last week, it's Cardinia Park. Their record down there is outstanding. They probably win 8 or 9 out of 10. So particularly for our side to go down there thinking, gee, your back's against the wall before you even start. But we thought to ourselves, if we could do this and this, and we did it really well, that'd really trouble the Cats. We managed to do that for about 15 minutes out of 120. It just ain't going to get it done, So that's the challenge we've got, to sustain it for a longer period of time, and hopefully against the Hawks this week we'll be able to do it a little bit longer and see if that's enough for us to get a win.
How did Cam Zerha go this morning? Is he a good chance to play?
Yeah, well, he's been named, and obviously needed to get through the session, and he trained really well. So unless he's had a hiccup in the last couple of minutes of the session, which I haven't seen him, but he'll be good enough to play, I'm sure.
You've coached against Hawthorn before last year, but does it still feel a bit weird coming up against the outside and combative?
No, listen, there's been a lot of water flow under the bridge, and sort of I'm sure they're established here, and they've got on with their footy club what they need to do too, and so really, I mean, it's, as much as it might seem unemotional, it's just like it has to be faceless. It doesn't matter whether it's Hawthorn or Geelong or whatever the opponent is. It's just like we've got 23 guys that have got to go out and compete and do their very best, knowing full well, as we said before, both of the clubs right at the minute are in the really difficult phase of having one eye on the future and one eye on the now. And the one eye on the now is all about trying to win games of footy and what that does to your environment. But the other eye is on where we're going to be in our future. And both clubs are in that same position. So as I said, whilst the football world wants to make a big thing perhaps of the result of this week's game for both clubs, the result really is only just a small thing. It's about where we want to be in 2 or 3 years' time.
Are you expecting any sort of bounce back from the Hawks after Sam Mitchell gave them a bit of a spray after the game last week, and then apparently a bit of tough love at training? Are you expecting any sort of bounce back on the back of that?
No different than what the Kangas should expect from our performance last week too. So both sides got their backs against the wall, come off disappointing losses. We would have liked to have done better down at Geelong. They would have liked to have done better against Gold Coast. We both get an opportunity to do that. Gold Coast, a little bit like us going to Geelong, Gold Coast is going to be really hard, and have been for a fair while, but they're really hard to beat up there, and probably even more so now. So, I think both sides will be keen to try to make amends for disappointing performances last week. But when you come up against really good sides, sometimes I actually rated St Kilda as a pretty good side, but they were made to look inept last night. And last Thursday night, Brisbane made Melbourne look inept. It can happen in the game to the very best sides, let alone the ones that sort of in a program where they're trying to get some wins on the board. So I'd expect it's going to be a tough fierce contest, but we're just as keen to make amends for last week as well. I'm sure Hawthorn is.
Nick Larkey's 100 games, how important is it to celebrate that milestone?
Yeah, really important. He's become a real leader of our footy club, and obviously a very, very important player for us. And he's a really good story too. He's taken pick 73 or somewhere thereabouts in the draft. I think Mitch Lewis was in the same draft. He's another good story. These guys, you don't necessarily have to be taken as a high draft pick to emerge and become a really valuable player. And I'm sure every club in the competition, if they became available, would love a Larkey or a Mitch Lewis in their side. So you can come from anywhere to play AFL footy, and his is a great story, and he's emerged as a really important player for our footy club.
You had some interesting thoughts about being taken in the 70s. You didn't feel there was as much pressure on him as some higher draft picks at the club. Do you sort of see that in pre-seasons with your higher draft picks compared to the ones taken in the first round, and sort of how they respond to different things?
Listen, it's a challenge for lads who are picked so high, without a doubt. The exposure and the and perhaps the scrutiny that they come under, but that's all part of it. They're a lot of these lads, including Nick, they're 18-year-old lads that have just come out of high school straight onto an AFL list. So there's a lot of maturity maturing to be done. Of those young blokes. No different to when we were 18 and coming through. It was a little bit longer for me than you, but with that that added pressure and scrutiny of being a high draft pick and an expectation that they're going to get there pretty quickly, it can be hard for some of those guys, particularly the taller ones that usually take a little bit longer. But they've just got to deal with it as they go through, and for someone like Nick, who was perhaps a later draft pick, then it might be a little bit easier to dodge some of that scrutiny and expectation. But every guy that's on an AFL list, the pressure and the expectation comes at some point. Otherwise, you don't stay on a list. So they all need to be exposed to it.
How's Colin McKercher going? He was hospital last week, but seems to have bounced back pretty well in the penalty today.
Well, he got rattled in a pretty solid collision, and it just affected his breathing more than anything, which is a little bit frightening for him and us, and that's why he just needed to go and get checked. There's no real structural damage, which we thought was the case, and that usually when you're having breathing problems, there's usually something structural. So we and he were delighted there was nothing structural wrong, and that all settled, and he was good to go by Tuesday. In actual fact, it was surprising because when a player has to be subbed out of a game, you usually, I reckon 9 times out of 10 they're not playing the next week. My immediate fears were he's going to miss this week, but by Tuesday he was right to train. He trained Tuesday, trained again today, so he's right to go.